Okay, it is Wednesday morning and welcome to The Brief, the daily roundup of news in Australia. So welcome to Wednesday. Let's start with Remembrance Day, which was held yesterday across the country. And if you were lucky, Princess Anne dropped in too. Yes, the Princess Royal is visiting Australia and what has been a relatively low-key outing. But for the British royal family, that's probably a blessing after the ongoing salacious stories about her brother. Now just plain Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. How that must sting. Anyway, Sydney's Daily Telegraph has a princess on its front page alongside a serving soldier and a full report. Heartfelt silence heard across the world, says the headline. That's on page 14 today and written by Tyson Jackson. Now, Remembrance Day doesn't get as much press here or quite the attendance as it does in the UK, where it's a major war commemorative event, of course. For regional journalists in particular here, though, Remembrance Day is a big day and is always covered in much detail as locals march and remember. In Australia, Anzac Day is the big one, but the Australian leans in with a clever headline today. Dire defence warning to PM at 11th hour. Because the retiring head of the Returned Servicemen's League, the RSL, Major General Mellick, used the event at which PM Anthony Albanese appeared to push for more defence spending and warned, he said, the Commonwealth must be prepared to spend more liberally than it has ever done on its defence. Fighting words indeed. And let's go to some criminal behaviour now after the usual minute's silence for Remembrance Day. I won't do it because we're on a tight schedule, but I did do it earlier on. We go to crime. It's a big story in the media, of course, and always gets plenty of readers, and nowhere does it appear to be bigger at the moment than in Melbourne's Herald Sun, the News Corp tabloid running a regular all-caps "Suburbs Under Siege" banner under which it has been covering what it says is violent youths terrorising Melbourne. And according to The Sun, they have had a win for their campaign in that violent offenders aged 14 and over could soon be spending up to 25 years in jail rather than the current maximum of 3 years. If that comes in, not much hope of any rehabilitation then, I imagine. Still, plenty of Sun Herald readers will no doubt be pleased by the news, and if it lessens machete crime, which is a big problem here at the moment, it will be seen as a win. Alex White has that story. And The Age also has on their front page with the proposed sentencing guidelines. Sorry, The Age also run on their front page with the proposed new sentencing guidelines. Their headline is "Violent Kids to Get Adult Sentences in New Regime." That story written by Kieran Rooney, Rachel Eddy and Chip Legrand. Over at News Corp paper The Australian, you often don't see the economics correspondent Matthew Cranston involved in crime. I should say, to be clear, I'm of course writing about crime, but today he is in a special investigation, as it's headed by Cranston, which makes the top of page 1, and he reveals criminal gangs are fraudulently using legitimate businesses to smuggle tons of illegal tobacco into the country. It really is a gripping read and deserves your attention today. Have a look if you can. Now, in a story where crimes are yet to be proven, the Sydney Morning Herald carries a picture of, as they put it, disgraced Jones. That's Alan Jones, a former talkback radio presenter who is faced with a long list of alleged indecent assault and sexual touching charges. The SMH has a picture of Jones dressed casually. I'm just going to change that from have to has. And at a coffee shop. The point of this particular, capital T, Tony Bosworth, the point of this particular, I'll just take that A out. This is what you have to do every day. It's called sub-editing. The point of this particular piece is that a date for the trial to begin has been set for next August and is expected to include more than 100 witnesses, which will take some time. Crime reporter Claire Sibthorpe with that story. And let's have a look at the Nazi rally, which took place back on the weekend. And it's not quite crime, but still, it's in the news today. Also in the Sydney Morning Herald. A story by Jordan Baker, Riley Walter, he's one of the crime reporters too, and Jessica McSweeney, who report intelligence officers knew about the gathering in advance. The story thus far has been that the cops have been left flat-footed, as had Premier Chris Minns. They didn't seem to realise that this march was actually going on. Having said that, other reports this morning say the march was unlikely to legally have been stopped anyway, though Michaela Whitbourne in the Sydney Morning Herald reports that experts say police had the power to act. As an aside, Deborah Snow reports on page 3 of the Herald that there's no honeymoon for top cop as fallout continues. That refers to recently appointed Police Commissioner Mal Lanyon, who's facing a bit of heat of his own. Now, talking of heat, apparently a third of voters want to scrap the net zero target that the federal government have got. That's according to an exclusive by James Massola in both the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. At The Age, Paul Sackle joins Massola on the story with a joint byline and additional state reporting. There is much swirling around this topic because, of course, the Liberal Party room is due to vote on whether to scrap that aspiration, and they are in all sorts of strife as infighting continues. Massola's story comes out of a Resolve Political Monitor survey, and it's an exclusive in this case because the 9 newspapers commissioned it. Some 1,804 people provided their answers, and interestingly, some 12% wanted little or no action on climate change. Go figure. Still, 15% were undecided on anything. What can you say? And the heat is also, I know I'm pushing the heat thing a bit, is also on a major Victorian footy club, that's AFL in this instance, Australian Football League or something, as reported in an exclusive under the Building Bad Dinkers by Nick McKenzie, Sam McClure and David Marin Guzman. There are claims the club was propped up with CFMEU, that's a building union, members' funds, and by building firms seeking to curry favour with union power brokers. Port Melbourne Football Club is the one in the crosshairs there, but as it also says in the story, there is no proven wrongdoing. Well, we'll see how that rolls out, but this building bad construction corruption story certainly seems to have some legs. It's been going for some while now. The Daily Telegraph, meanwhile, has a front pager exclusive by Josh Hanrahan on a plan to halve the number of people on fire trucks in rural areas. Fireys fear halving crew sizes is going to cost lives, says the subhead. This is an important story. Back not that long ago, I worked across several local papers, and in one town of 5,000 people, they couldn't even find locals to man the fire engine. Staff had to be brought in from outside, which left the region in a very precarious position, not least because distances in those areas are vast. So having staff there and ready to go to fight fires is crucial. And finally, at the Australian Financial Review this morning, no skullduggery, at least not on the main front page. Story by Foreign Affairs correspondent Michael Reeder reports, as the headline says, data centre boom fuels recovery. This is an interesting one because the surge in data centre construction has, as Reed reports, made technology firms one of the biggest drivers of Australia's economic recovery, with spending on IT equipment tripling over the past 2 years. Now get this, as Reed reveals, investment in machinery and equipment by IT firms hit $1.4 billion on IT linked, let's call it stuff here, cooling towers, routers and servers for data centres, plus more of course. That was in June alone. Of course, all those data centres also cost a lot to run in terms of energy and keeping them cool. So perhaps people who don't want to go along with net zero need to think about that one. Okay, have a good day, folks, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.